It's been an interesting past couple of days because we are seeing the delusions of the PC master race playing out for all to see, right? You're seeing a lot of people right now making commentary videos on this channel regarding my comments regarding Nintendo v Yuzu, my belief that Nintendo will win the lawsuit, that emulators are going to get wrecked, and PC gamers are going to have one less major bullet in their chamber, right? They will not be able to pretend that they can legally emulate Nintendo games, right? Right now, you're seeing a lot of people being dishonest about what the lawsuit actually entails, what Yuzu has done wrong, and honestly, the whether or not like emulation is even legal. Because that's kind of the cope that a lot of people have right now is that like, oh, we settled this in the 90s. Oh, emulation is perfectly legal. But what we're seeing in recent years with like people setting up Patreons and uh, taking in tens of thousands of dollars in donations to try and get games like Shin Megami Tensei 5 running on Yuzu, right? Day one, right? When you have YouTubers coming out and like bragging about playing Xenoblade Chronicles 3 ahead of time, looking at you, oh no, it's Alex and Mutahar, right? When you have people doing that, right? When you have people like just bragging about pirating games openly, yeah, like it needs to be acknowledged that emulation is piracy because you cannot emulate games without pirating them, right? The cope has always been that like, oh, I take the original hardware and I dump them into a thing and I set it up with my computer. I soft mod the hardware and I dump all these ROMs. Nobody does that. They just straight up rip them from the internet. Like every single one of them. Like all this dancing around like in regards to like legal emulation and getting a hold of legally owned games and pirate and playing games on legally emulated software. Like it's all just a cope. It always has been, but lately, like these guys, I think one of my commenters said it the best. They got too cocky, right? Yuzu was releasing statements bragging about how they're straight up like pirating Nintendo games, right? They were bragging about Tears of the Kingdom. They were bragging about this. They were bragging about that, right? They were It's been a major issue over the past couple of years because a lot of people really genuinely believe that Nintendo Switch would not be able to remain competitive because of Yuzu, right? That was the belief of a lot of these people was that like, oh, if the emulator doesn't work right away, it doesn't matter. I'll wait like a couple years or whatever, and then I'll just download the game later and play it on my PC, like because I don't want to give Nintendo a dime, right? That's been kind of the justification for it, right? We've been seeing these people do that over and over again with Metroid Dread, with the Legend of Zelda's Tears of the Kingdom, with the Link's Awakening remake, right? Like there's been like so many notable cases of companies bragging about emulation, right? There was that infamous bit a while ago where Valve promoted Yuzu on their Steam Deck trailer and then had to take the trailer down and edit the clip because what they did in promoting an emulator that's specifically designed to promote Nintendo to play Nintendo software. What they did was illegal, right? You had um, that other situation. What was I thinking of? Kotaku, right? They released an article about how Metroid Dread was better on an emulator, right? And that ended up in with Nintendo blacklisting them, right? Like there's been all these issues, right? All these cases, Nintendo getting Dolphin removed from Steam, for example, right? There's been all these things that have been propping up over the past couple of years that indicate very strongly that emulators are going to be made illegal very, very, very soon. But people are in denial about it, right? Just look at how badly Mutahar was coping and seething when Nintendo announced the Nintendo v Yuzu lawsuit because he knows, right? He knows that Yuzu is reusing Nintendo's code illegally in their own programs, right? He knows that Yuzu exists primarily to product Nintendo software. He knows that the only reason emulation has been allowed to continue thus far is because Sony screwed up a lawsuit in the 90s, right? That hasn't been overturned yet, right? Like like that's something that a lot of emulation shills haven't really thought about is that like the law can change. And it has become a very apparent over the past couple of years how dangerous the emulation community is for Nintendo's business, right? Because like so many people downplay Nintendo's releases by just claiming that like, oh, I can just emulate that, right? I don't need to buy a Nintendo hardware because I could just emulate that game as soon as it's made available on PC. And of course, it's not actually true, right? Because I've talked about this before about then they wouldn't be begging for PC ports if it was true. But like the issue, as I see it, is that a lot of people are under the mistaken belief that the PC master race can just play any game from any piece of hardware with like little issues if you can get a hold of it. When that isn't really the case, especially when you start going off of like Nintendo hardware, right? Like I think to this day there still is not a legit good original Xbox emulator, right? Like I think the PS3 still struggles to be emulated. And like it's not because of power or anything like that. It's because there's no interest in the community to emulate these games, right? The issue is this community desperately wants to create the illusion that Nintendo hardware has no value because the software is easily playable on other pieces of hardware, specifically PCs, specifically Steam Decks, right? Right? It has been the go-to excuse for the past couple of years to downplay all these major Nintendo releases by just claiming that like, oh, I emulated it, but it wasn't very good. With we really need to address the fact that this is a problem. And I have been addressing it. I have been talking about this every time it comes up. I have been bringing up the fact that Nintendo really, really needs to start taking down emulators, and this seems to be a major step in that direction. I haven't had a look at the lawsuit yet, but from what I've been told, they have an ironclad case against Yuzu, and even if they didn't, they would easily be able to outspend them, right, in court, right? Yuzu is not going to be able to fight Nintendo in court, and the community knows that. Like right now, they believe that they'll just go to Ryujinx or whatever and just do the same thing over there, but the reality is Nintendo is cracking down on this stuff. Like it's not going to be too much longer until Nintendo is just going to be able to see an emulator come up and just like strike it down immediately, right? There's going to be precedent for it. There's going to be a process. There's going to be like an inability to get an emulator up and running to begin with, right? Like because I talked about this last night where Yuzu needs to take donations in order to keep itself relevant because without them, it isn't going to be able to get past copyright, right? It isn't going to be able to get past like the anti-piracy measures for new games, right? They have to keep the donations coming in order to promise their consumers that eventually you'll be able to play Nintendo games on PC. Now, it doesn't matter if it takes like 1 year, 5, 10. Like the promise is more than enough for these people, right? Like just look at how many of these people still believe that Bayonetta 2 is going to come to PC, or just look at how many people believe that Nintendo is going to release their games on PC in general, in spite of like what a big knock against their business that would be, right? Like these people don't understand how Nintendo makes money, but they genuinely think that catering to the pirates, allowing their games to come to PC, like putting their games on Steam or setting up their own launcher, like that would they don't understand why that would be detrimental to them, right? These people legit believe that Nintendo having their own hardware is a net loss for them. Like they don't understand that Nintendo actually makes money off of their hardware, right? They don't understand that that's a major part of their business, and um, it really needs to be said, right? It really needs to be understood by these people. Like at this point, like I don't even consider the PC Master Race to be like a viable competitor to Nintendo, right? Like I've been saying this for a while, but like the fact that they have to rely so much on this narrative that they can just emulate Nintendo games to keep themselves relevant, like to me that really demonstrates just how uncompetitive they actually are. Because that's your major pitch to people that like, oh, I can emulate that. Like it's a cope. Always has been, always will be, until Nintendo finally gets the courts to accept that it is completely illegal worldwide.